Welcome back to another book review with me. I recently finished The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second in the original Mistborn trilogy. I recently reviewed Mistborn. If you've not read this series, I highly encourage you to pick it up. This series is so good. So I read Mistborn over Christmas, finished it, and then almost immediately picked up this book. I took a break for a couple things around the holidays, but this is a solid follow-up to Mistborn. I loved the fact that we didn't quite pick up where Mistborn left off. You do pick up a year into the future, but what was really well done was in the opening chapters, it kind of gave you an idea of what each of the characters had been doing during this time. And so I liked that we didn't immediately just jump right in, which is such a funny thing because with Mistborn, I was like, oh, I wish I had a little more backstory. But I guess coming from Mistborn into the Well of Ascension and knowing where Mistborn ended, it was nice to not kind of see the everyday things that happened immediately following what happened at the end of Mistborn. The Well of Ascension is really well done. I liked the twist at the end. I didn't quite see it coming. So I liked that you thought one thing and then in the book, something completely different happened. I still have a lot of questions. If you watch my Mistborn review, you know I have a lot of questions and everybody keeps telling me wait for the Hero of Ages to get all the questions answered, which I'm currently reading. And so still have questions. What I really enjoyed with these characters, in particular then, is the fact that you got to see her grief play out in a very unique way, I feel like, over a character's death that happened in Mistborn. And I liked that we didn't just bypass it, and we also got to see how all the other characters in the story were dealing with their grief, right? And how each one of their characterizations of grief was different. Were they burning the candle at both ends because they don't want to sleep, because they don't want to deal with the grief? Did they lose a little bit of the happiness and the light that made them who they were? Did they become a little bit harder because they were dealing with this grief and the loss of people? So I liked that aspect of this book, and I thought the characterization of grief was really well done. Also, I like the characterization of what happens when what you know, and you've known for 1,000 years at this point, which is where Mistborn is, right? That's where it opens up. And you change very substantial things in that book. And now, because of the changes that you helped make and help define, how do you build a new world from these changes that you implement? Like, what do you do? And what happens when you want one thing and another group wants to keep the status quo? The status quo wasn't really fair. It's not really working for the people. That is really well discussed in this book. I found it very intriguing the way that it was handled. I enjoyed this book. I enjoy the characters, and the way it ended, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to immediately go pick up the next book because I want to read it and I want to know what is going to happen next. And so I'm like 250 pages, I think, into the next one. So I enjoy kind of how these books are being written and how we're getting this really nice journey with our main characters. I don't really have any complaints with this one. Again, I am someone that likes the whys. That's like, my biggest complaint is the fact that I'm like, what's gonna happen next? I need to know. But this is why we're reading the third book, right? So if you've not read Brandon Sanderson, I encourage you to go pick these up. Again, Mistborn was my first Brandon Sanderson book. I have seen recommendations for other books, so I will definitely be picking up more books by him in the future. I'm going to finish the Hero of Ages, and I will let you know what I think of that one and see if I get my questions answered. So follow along for more reviews on Brandon Sanderson's book. Again, if you have any recommendations on what I should read once I am done with this, if it is reading the next 3 that's kind of part of this series or the next 4, or the Stormlight Archives, please let me know. Like, I am totally down to take recommendations for this. Let me know your favorite Brandon Sanderson book. So if I need to go read that, if it's an individual or standalone story, I'm definitely interested in reading more by Brandon Sanderson and seeing what he does with character development, because so far from what I've seen in Mistborn and The Well of Ascension, the character development and the way he portrays the characters and their flaws, as well as the things they do right and do well. Like, I feel like it is unparalleled, and it is really well done. And so far from what I see of the third book, he is continuing that with the third book. And so I'm very, very excited for more Brandon Sanderson in my future.